to Strong Communities meeting. I hope you've all had a good summer and a safe summer, and welcome back to members and to members of the public. Good morning. Can I just ask you to make sure your mobile phones are switched off or on silent, and anybody who wants to leave the chamber during discussion, just leave as quietly as you can, please, and you're very welcome to come back in. Just make it very discreet. We're going to get on with the meeting now. We have members of the public here with us. I think you're here probably for speeding issues, but if you're not, I'll bring you in one at a time and I'll allow you to speak. I'll give you a slot. If you're here representing communities or you're representing groups, can you please let us know and give your name and who you're here representing or what you're representing, a road or a village or whatever, please. Thank you. I'll start the agenda with scrutiny and crime disorder matters. Agenda part A. We have no matters at the moment to discuss, so I'll follow on to part B of the agenda, which is number 1. Apologies for absence, Clark.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors David Dovey, Anne Webb and Scrutiny Manager Hazel Island.
Okay, any apologies from Councillor Jordan? Councillor Watts. Thank you. Declarations of interest, anyone? As and when?
Chairman, only to say, isn't it great? You've always had a yearning to have members of the public here to attend and join our meeting. Well, they've certainly come this morning.
Yes, thank you, Val. Declarations of interest, as and when, everyone, yes? Yep. Right, agenda item number 3. We do have an agenda item number 6 there, which is speed and road safety. I don't know whether, Mr. Ford, are you with us now? Yes?
He's unable to make it.
He's unable to make it?
Then if we have come from the
Road
police,
Gwent Police.
to hopefully be able to pick up queries and questions as
Okay.
as they arise. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do the presentation.
Right, okay. I'll leave the agenda as it is then, and I'll bring you in on agenda item number 6. And members of the public, you're very welcome to stay for that agenda item, and I will allow questions as long as they are to the point. Okay? Right, agenda item number 3. Members of the public, it's your platform. Do I have anybody want to ask any questions or any issues that you want to bring to the committee's attention for scrutiny? Can you give your name, please, who you're here for or where you're from, etc.? Thank you.
My name is Ron Adam. Can you put the mic on, Ron, please? That's it. My name is Ron Adam. I represent Llanover Community Council and the area between Usk and Abergavenny on the B4598 road and the R64 road to Raglan.
Okay, Mr. Adam, yes.
Can I speak?
Yes, please.
In 2014, this Strong Community Select Committee provided the springboard which launched Llanover Community Council's road safety campaigns on the B4598 and the R64. Subsequently, the first community speedwatch team in South Wales was started in the summer of that year and continues to this day. The lowering of the speed limits on these roads from 60 to 50 miles an hour has had a calming effect on the majority of drivers. However, a minority are noticeable by their reckless speed, their disregard for other road users, their extremely noisy machines, and their complete contempt for the communities who live alongside and near these roads. It is apparent to all that these drivers are breaking the law regularly. How do we deal with this problem, which is so concerning to our communities, as it is perceived that there has been very little policing on these roads in the last 2 years? There are 2 solutions. First, it is with the cooperation of the police. Following discussions with many concerned people, I met Inspector Arwell Hicks of Gwent Police at Abergavenny Police Station on the 17th of August 2016 to ask whether the community could pay the police to carry out their legal duties on specific occasions, particularly at weekends. Inspector Hicks was most helpful and said that the point about payment was contrary to his police training, but that he would pass the request on to a higher authority. In the meantime, he told me that he had been liaising with Inspector Morris of Chepstow, and that soon there would be police blitzes on the roads near Chepstow and the B4598. The weather on Sunday, August the 28th, was beautiful, and our community was bracing itself for a thoroughly unpleasant, noisy day. However, Gwent Police carried out a blitz at Llanfair Kilgedin on that day, and it was like it was 10 years ago on a weekend. Peace descended on the Usk Valley. Quite the reverse, however, occurred last Sunday, September the 11th, when the noise and sheer bad and dangerous driving prompted me to ring Gwent Police's 101 number. As was illustrated on the 28th of August, the solution to this problem is more irregular policing and the positioning of a go-safe vehicle at irregular intervals. The key also being the inspection by the government's Vehicle Inspection Department of vehicles' exhaust systems. Our community asks this select committee to advocate as strongly as possible on our behalf to put pressure at the highest level on Gwent Police, Go Safe Wales, and the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, the DVSA, to carry out their legal duties to make our roads safer and quieter for all who use them. The second solution, which would be run in conjunction with policing the law, is to make the B4598 and the R64 less attractive to speedsters. It is to place physical calming measures at strategic intervals along these roads, as has happened in Surrey, Hampshire, and Wiltshire. And may I suggest that this committee ask the Highways Department to come up with proposals and costings and report within 1 month. Both solutions together are within the capabilities of Monmouthshire County Council and are achievable. Our community urgently needs your help. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Adam, for a well presented case for the area which you represent. Are there any answers to any of Mr. Adams' proposals or questions? Roger?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. For benefit of members of the public, my name is Roger Hoggins. I'm Head of Operations for Monmouthshire County Council. Mr. Chairman, would you like to pick them up as we go along, or would you like to gather a few? Or I'm quite happy to respond as far as I can to Mr. Adam at this point, if that's of help. I think that would be more. Would you be in a position to speak about how the policing scheme for the speed management?
Yeah, I can give some answers. Obviously, I can't give them all. I don't know what was arranged. Sorry, my name is Glenn Walker. I'm from Go Safe. I'm the speed complaints officer for Gwent Police. I'm the speed complaints. Is that better? I'm the speed complaints officer from Gwent Police. Any speed complaints that come into Gwent Police should come through my office, and then I then allocate them out to the local neighbourhood policing for them to carry out the basic checks on the speed complaints. If someone has a speed issue or a complaint in their area or near their home, they either write in, contact Go Safe, or contact the police. It then comes to me. As I said, I allocate it out then to a local officer who should carry out 3 1.5-hour speed checks at a location within 1 month. That data then is sent back to my office, and depending on the speeds that come in, because it's for 1.5 hours, because as we all know, people flash and one of the motorists, so it's pointless being there all day. So we also ask the members of the public specific times of the day, days of the week. Quite often people say, oh, they're speeding at the rush hour. Well, in the rush hour, normally it's quiet, so they do get, confused really with the times. Whatever time they say, we meet with them, go to the location, and we say, point out exactly where the speed complaint issue is, so that when we do the checks, they can't come back to us and say, this was done in the wrong location at the wrong time. So we try to abide by what their request is. In relation to the B4598, what happens, once the figures come in, if they are quite high, I then deploy a covert analyzer, which is up for a minimum of 7 days. It records the speeds of vehicles 24/7, and that information then is downloaded, and it gives a figure. ACPO guidelines say that the speeds for prosecution should be 10% above the speed limit plus 2 miles an hour. So in a 30-mile-an-hour area, for prosecution, is 35 miles an hour. That information, we put the Golden River up, which is the covert unit. It records the speeds. Once that information comes back into me from the unit, it takes off the top 15% of speed. Because wherever you drive in the country, motorists, quite a lot of motorists don't abide by the speed limit. So the top 15% of speeds are taken off, and then the majority of drivers who drive within the speed limit, that is averaged out. That comes up with a figure. That figure then, if it's above 35 miles an hour, we have to fill in a form to Go Safe, put in the community factors, houses, bus stops, schools, shops, public houses, anything that could have an effect on the speed of the vehicles. That's scored. It's scored on the speed and the factors. And when we put the information in, it'll say refer to Go Safe or do not refer. If it's do not refer, it goes back to local policing to enforce.
The problem with this situation is that Go Safe and the way they operate actually is counterproductive to making the roads safe for us, because they're basing all their information on average speed. Now, these situations on our road dependent on weather, and they're dependent on the time of year. We never know when the bikes are going to come, but if the bikes don't know when Go Safe are going to come, even if they're going to stop on our road and have his sandwiches, that is enough to actually put off hundreds and hundreds of drivers. And we've got to think out of the box here, not base things on a Golden River, which is an average speed, which frankly is utter nonsense, with respect.
Okay.
If I could just respond to that, in relation to the B4598, last summer, as a result of a speed complaint on the B4598, a Golden River unit was deployed at a location specified by the complainant, which was near the Steel Horse calf on that road. The data that came back from the Golden River, and as I said, it was up, I think, for a period of more than 7 days. The speed came back and it was below the speed limit for the road at the time.
Okay. Just a second. I think what we're looking for, though, I think what I'm gauging at and what I'm looking at here is, I think we're after some continuity, aren't we? With monitoring and enforcement. And
yes.
I do recognise on everybody's part here in this day and age that is really difficult for yourselves, for funding, for manpower, but as residents as well, you expect that continuity is upheld. Now, I don't know whether I'm going to say the right thing here, but there are a couple of ways which you have said could be workable within your area to actually maintain a safe speed. Now, I know the cameras, I know the 365 cameras are achievable in some areas by cutting speed and making sure people drive at a safe speed, but the problem you do have is with them is once you've gone past them, you can do what you want after. There's got to be a solution here, and you have made some really valid points there about moving forward with this authority and working with partners, and I think it's just a process of trying to push that forward. We could talk all day about speed. Every member here has issues within their wards about speed and safety, not just where you're from, sir. So what I suggest is I'm not going to go across the table backwards and forwards on this. I think what we will do is we'll go away from today with your particular issue and see whether we as a council can try and put some things forward in trying to make it easier for you and residents living within that community. Is that okay?
Can I just say the briefest of words, please?
You can, yes.
Lovely, thank you.
And your name is?
My name's Ian Evans.
Sorry to interrupt. Can the gentleman, the councillors and the police,
Oh, can I
pop your mic off? If you press the
sorry.
button again, that's it. and the councillor at the
There
back.
we are. My name's Ian Evans. I'm a Llanfair Kilgettin resident and a member of the Speedwatch scheme in Llanfair. All I wanted to mention really is that we're all aware of what the problem is and how knotty a problem it is to solve. My specific issue is with the sort of regular commission of Section 59A of the Road Traffic Act offences on the B4598. So antisocial, dangerous riding. And riders aren't being prosecuted because the police aren't there to prosecute them. We have a police presence in wet weather, which is pointless, absolutely pointless, because they don't come to us in wet weather. They come on fine, dry, hot days. But I just want to ask if anyone here is here from the police, why they aren't pursuing people who are regularly committing Section 59 RTA offences.
Okay. Yep.
I'm Nicola Rossa. I'm one of the camera enforcement officers in the Go Safe vehicles. I've come here obviously because another issue that we're encountering with a lot of these speed complaints and that Glenn has brought to my attention is the parking. Now obviously, as you can imagine, driving a Go Safe vehicle, we have to be squeaky clean because of the complaints we have. So unlike a police vehicle where they can just more or less park in most areas and carry out enforcement, we can't. As camera enforcement officers in a Go Safe vehicle, it has to go through a whole process with risk assessments, the speed complaints procedure before we can actually turn up. We're not a problem solver. We help the situation, but we're not a 24/7 cure for what the problem is. If there's a site there, then we will turn up when we can. As you can imagine, we've got 6 vans that cover the whole of Gwent. So that's Monmouthshire, Torfaen, Newport, Blaen y Gwent, and Caerphilly. So we got 6 officers for all the areas. So when we can, we will turn up. Now, whether it be wet, whether it be dry, but as far as I'm aware, we don't even have a site on the B4598. I noted you said on the 28th there was a police blitz. Now, I'm not a police officer, I'm a civilian member of staff, so I can't speak for the police officers that were actually there. But it wasn't Go Safe, because as far as I'm aware, we don't have a site along the B4598 where you're requesting us to be. The issue being is parking, sadly. Otherwise, we would be there like a shot.
Do we have anyone here from the police today?
No, I don't think we do. No, the invite today was for Go Safe, the Camera Safety Partnership, to give us a presentation. And we got representatives from them here with us. The police were not invited because the agenda item was safety partnership.
Could I ask you to consider that, Chair, specifically in the light of the problem with Section 59 RTA offences being committed, because that's the primary problem?
Yeah, Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We can raise that with the police to get a response on that matter.
Right. I think we've got a conclusion from your questions, sir. I think we will be well documented. Right, I've got another member of the public. Just a second. Hang on, Roger.
Mr. Adams raised the issue about physical features. Would you like to deal with that there or come back to it?
We'll come back to it. Okay. Sir?
Hello, my name is Martin Bortwood. I'm a member of the Llanbaddock community. There are 5 of us here today. 2 brief questions at this moment. Number 1, is this an appropriate time, since it's all the same subject, for us to also present our case regarding speeding? That was the first question. Second question is, if the analysis that's taken is on the basis of average speed, it seems to be rather pointless. I completely agree with the previous speaker. People get killed and accidents happen not because of an average speed, but because of individual events. And the case that we want to present is exactly that people are speeding, exceeding the speed limit by double the speed limit on many occasions, but not necessarily on average. So I'm not quite sure where we go from here. It's nice to talk about it and say, well, we've done this survey, but at the end of the day, what are the criteria that we need to put on the table to make something happen, whether it be speed restraining factors or cameras or other matters? I'm not quite sure on what the specific steps are, because when we present our case, our objective is to say, if you do this and do this, something will happen, or this is the person or people that you need to refer to. And I'm not quite sure of that process.
I think the problem we do have is with all the issues of speeding and danger on the road and parking, etc. I think it's trying to find a solution which is the best solution, because we can do lots of things, but does it actually give you a solution at the end of it? And that is the key factor in all this. When you spend lots and lots of money, you can have lots and lots of deaths, but actually will you have a solution at the end of this which will actually eradicate what everybody's after, is safer roads and noise pollution, etc. within the county of Monmouthshire? So that's a very good question, and I can't answer that. If we had an answer, I don't think we'd be sitting here today, because we'd be able to just wave a magic wand and we get it solved. I think the top and bottom of it is we need to be focused on what best solution is for that area or that stretch of road, because it may not be suitable for another stretch of road. I think the police are quite clear there that some of the areas there that actually to monitor speed and carry out their job, it's impossible sometimes. You carry on with what you're...
Is this an appropriate juncture for us to...
I will allow it today, because I think it's your forum and it's your platform. You give us what you need to give us today.
Okay, thanks very much. So, as I said, my name's Martin Borwood, and I'm one of the 5 representatives of the Llanbaddock area. We're here today to try to understand the mechanism of decision-making to get a solution to our problem. And we see our problem slightly different to the previous example. We're interested in the domain from the Usk Bridge out towards Little Mill on the Pontypool Road, that basically terminates about by here, this office, from here into town and back. And we see the speed limit just at the Usk Island and into town is 30 miles an hour. And we see people driving at 60 miles an hour coming out of town, and sometimes also approaching town as well. Now, we're all residents of that area, and the pavement system is a bit narrow, and the difficulty in just walking in and out of town is quite traumatic sometimes. So we'd like to have speed restraining features added to that section of the road. So our case is relatively straightforward. We would like to put some speed restraining facilities in, either some sort of a chicane arrangement and or sleeping policemen. It won't affect the traffic throughput at all, because everyone has to slow down to get in around the bridge. So whether it was a 20-mile-an-hour limit or a 30-mile-an-hour limit, it wouldn't make much of a difference. But we've got various people of different ages and abilities who need to use that road on a regular basis for accessing town, and the traffic is just not taking notice of the speed limit. So if we spoke to the local police officer who said there was a Golden River covert analysis available. But if that's based on an average speed limit, then it becomes a little pointless step, because it might be that the average ends up being slightly over 30 when there are people driving at 60. So is there any point in going through that? I mean, if it's a necessary step for a decision to do something, then we'll follow that protocol. But at the moment, our question is, what protocol do we have to go through in order to get speed restraining features added to that section of the road?
Okay, very valid point, Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I refer to that issue specifically at the moment, that particular stretch I know which you're on about, and then talk, but I also talk more widely about traffic calming measures. Perhaps to start off in the broadest sense, Monmouthshire County Council does introduce traffic calming measures, typically outside schools in residential areas and the like. We have introduced them on other occasions on what I'll refer to as through routes. But we've hit a great deal of opposition to them having been introduced, and quite frankly have removed them in some instances, because for the normal law-abiding motorist, they're a hazard which they consider unnecessary, I believe. That being said, there is no doubt that the physical features, particularly humps and ramps and that type of thing, do reduce traffic speed. However, on introducing them on through routes, and for example, the route from Esk right through to Abergavenny is an extremely long section of road in which to introduce physical features. In relation to, however, it may be something which may be considered in specific areas leading to villages, that type of thing, which brings me on to the Lambadic issue in particular. It just so happens that allied to this, we've been looking at heavy goods going through Esk. It feels like a lifetime, but quite frankly, for several years, we've been looking at how we manage traffic travelling through heavy goods, travelling through Esk, which may not do so. We've hit numerous problems. We've gone through lots of pieces of consultation. However, our latest effort is to actually look at whether or not some form of features, be they chicanes, be they platforms, that type of feature would help. In this instance, it wouldn't actually be directed at the speed issue, but it would in any event have that effect. It was to, quite frankly, make us less attractive to through HGVs. And we are, at the moment, seeking some advice from an outside specialist on that type of scheme and where we may introduce it elsewhere. I did note that Mr. Adams did mention of schemes in other authorities, and quite frankly, if they've got good ideas, I'd like to go and I'd like to speak to them as well, because if they have got those ideas and they do work and they've maintained them in there for some period of time, it gives us some evidence that some sort of scheme is available which could be used in these instances. And I'll pick those up with Mr. Adam after. I can't remember the counties you mentioned, but we'll pick that up. But I think the idea of introducing physical features works perhaps in entrances to villages, coming out of villages, that type of thing. Not unusual to have gateway facades of some description leading into villages, particularly in England. But actually introducing physical features is a much further step to take. And we have on previous occasions had a significant level of opposition when it's gone in, and we have removed them or altered them in some places. But we are willing to look at that if indeed it does help. However, the distance Esk through to Abergavenny got to be 10 miles, if not more. So we're happy to look at what other authorities are doing, and if there's a solution there, but I'm not convinced that our typical feature is necessarily going to work in that instance. But in your instance, we are actually looking at that type of thing at the moment.
Can I just ask then, so we are looking at a scheme, what the gentleman's complaints is about that area there. We have got a scheme, or we've started a scheme for that stretch of road, yes?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we've previously done some sketches on what might work, but we are actually now engaging with another specialist who has done numerous types of schemes like this about what might work in our instance. I'd have to say that it was aimed really at the HGVs, but it will have the same effect, because if it's physical features, it's that type of thing, it does have this effect of reducing, increasing awareness, and people therefore ideally responding to that. Maybe I'm forever the optimist, quite frankly, seeing the speed of some traffic in those instances, but that's the area which we are pursuing now.
So I was just specifically interested in the decision process. So I'd like to have clear when it would happen. So will it happen, yes or no? And when will it happen? And what are the steps that we can follow and help push along to get that decision and get the facilities in place?
I think there is a process that the authority will have to go through, and Roger's quite right there. More than anything now, we generally bring in people who have the know-how and a little bit more knowledge to put schemes together for us. But I'm quite pleased to say that if there is a scheme being looked at for HGVs and it will incorporate what you're looking for, I think that's quite pleasing. But what you're after is a time scale in the process, and the process will be the scheme will be put before senior officers, and it will go to the cabinet member. And generally these schemes are put forward, if there isn't a large sum of capital outlay, they will go to a single member decision. But most schemes will go before this committee also on the work programme or on a decision making by this council to look at, and your local council will have an input in that scheme also, and there will be a consultation on that scheme also. So I think you will have that platform there to look at that scheme and have an input into whether you think that scheme is something that would work. But don't forget, we have had a consultant who has actually put that scheme together. So that will be a rough idea of what the process will be.
So could we therefore follow that process? I mean, is there some method by email or somehow we can get linked into what's happening?
Yeah, that particular issue at the moment, we will be speaking with the county councillors involved. So it will be Councillor Val Smith in this instance will be involved as and when we've got something on paper which we can start talking to. So it'll be Councillor Smith, Councillor Strong, Councillor Brian Jones. Councillor Brian Jones is the cabinet member as well as being a local member. So we will involve those to have a look at the scheme in its first instance at a draft. And we will then probably, we'll bring it to the involved community councils as well.
Okay.
Thereafter, once we've got a scheme together, it then has to go out for consultation. That's a statutory requirement. It goes through that process. If it's not, well, you want to say it's not opposed, if we decide not to take it to a public inquiry, and this is how it works, if we decide not to, then it goes to the cabinet member. Normally it goes to the cabinet member for individual decision. In issues sometimes which are of an extent which we think it's more prudent to go to cabinet, then we would go there.
Okay, so when it goes for the decision step, that someone or some body will say yes or no, and that'll be based on a cost-benefit analysis or something? How are they going to decide yes or no? I just want to know what has to be put in place in order for the answer to be a certain yes.
It'll be the decision makers of the authority. I think Roger's mentioned HGV associations there, and let me tell you, and I'll be honest with you, they will object, and you will have to have big grounds to fight their objections, because they are big bodies. But once you get to that stage where the project is going to the next stage, it won't be about funding. Yes, that will play a part. It will be whether that scheme's going to work, and if the members within this authority believe that that's the scheme they want to go forward, it will go through a process, and it will the members make the decision.
I see.
From officers' recommendations.
I see. Thanks.
Right, I've got one member. I'll let you come back in. I don't have any issue with that, but I'll let the members speak as well, because they've been very quiet here and listening. I've got Councillor Easton, then Sarah Jones, and then I'll allow Councillor Blakeburn.
My question is a question of clarity. Roger has referred to Yscabagwenny. I believe we were talking about Usk Little Mill, aren't we? Was it just to slip your tongue, Yscabagwenny, rather than Usk Little Mill?
No, in relation to the...
What?
There is issues around Usk Little Mill. That's a different...
I think this gentleman was talking about Usk Little Mill, am I right?
That's correct, yes.
Councillor Smith has consistently raised issues previously about speeding generally on that route.
But how many schemes are you talking about? One or two? Because Yscabagwenny is different than Usk Little Mill.
the scheme which I've referred to, particularly in relation to Llanbaddock, happens to be a scheme which we're looking to in relation to managing heavy goods vehicles travelling through there. However, a benefit in any event would be to introduce physical features which will in any event reduce speeding. So it's come together at the same time. The issue in relation to B4598 through to R64 and into Abergavenny, we haven't got a scheme explicitly there, albeit we are looking at something within Usk itself, but not the length of that scheme. So that needs a different piece of work. But it does just so happen that we are looking at a scheme in Usk at the moment, and we're further progressed with that.
Sarah?
Yep. You know, I appreciate that we have to work to guidance and measurements, so Golden River and other things like that. But when you've received the number of emails, the number of calls I have over the last 4 years, that goes out the window. And you can't really, in a rural area like ours, look at measurements like that when half the vehicles are tractors anyway, which are bringing the average speed limit right down. So for the purposes, I think we need to look totally beyond that. You've seen the number of our community members that are here today, the support that they have for this issue, the dedication they put in terms of setting up the community Speedwatch scheme. So I think it's our duty now as a council to support them, as we have done in bringing in the speed limit, but in terms of our negotiations and relationship with the police and Go Safe around how we can support this further. I think, you know, just in terms of some actions, I think, and maybe this is preempting what's going to come up at a later point in the agenda, but I would suggest that we do reconvene our task and finish group and that the Gwent Police and Go Safe are members of that committee and we meet on a regular basis with some specific actions to come out of that. I think we should be inviting the Police and Crime Commissioner to our next meeting and raising these issues with him. I think we talk about not having a space on the B4598 and the R64 for a Go Safe van. I think it's time we just find a space and create a space for that van. If that's what it takes, I think that's what we need to be doing, and that should be a specific action to come out of today. And certainly we need to be looking at other local authorities, like Councillor Adam has said, in terms of where they've had success in terms of speed calming measures. So just to say I support fully everything that our community has said, and I think we need to have some specific actions to come out of today. I think our council has done a good role in terms of bringing down that speed limit and trying to make that road safer, but we need to now be seeing positive action from our partners to make sure that we get to the bottom of this issue, because we've had it come up to this committee. Every committee, you know, where speeding comes up, it's coming to this committee, it's coming to Brynicum, and it's time now that we really do see some action.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I've got Councillor Blakeburgh, then the Cabinet Member. Would you like to say a few words, Councillor Blakeburgh? Or Smith? No?
Really just sort of echoing a lot of Councillor Sarah Jones' comments, really. There is a lot of discussion on processes, and I'm very keen to have a strategy. Processes are about how we're going to do something. Strategy is what we're going to do. And I think people are asking for action. I've been a member for 4 years now. Constantly bringing this issue up, having campaign groups. And there seems to be sort of two issues. One is if, for example, if you've got a road or a village where there are no road calming signs, then obviously the police can't enforce anything. So the first challenge is for Monmouthshire County Council to be putting up road signs, to then work in partnership with the police to then enforce those speed limits. So there's kind of a two-way thing. And sometimes I do get a sense that the police saying we can't do it because of Monmouthshire, we can't do it because of the police. So I think there has to be some sort of a partnership, which means regular meetings to kind of move things forward. And as Councillor Sarah Jones is saying, I think we do need regular meetings with the new Crime Commissioner, because this is one of the biggest issues. Interestingly, when I drive through Newport, there are loads of signs saying 50 mile an hour on the rural roads. And I think I'm correct in saying that the Welsh Government has gifted the power to local authorities to reduce speeds on our rural roads. Newport seems to have done that, and there's quite a lot going past even through villages near and around Newport where I see 20 mile an hour, 30. Just be interesting to know what Newport's strategy on road calming is. it does feel as if the most proactive, and it's brilliant having proactive residents. Say I rely on my residents putting campaigns together. It's the most proactive who get their issue on the top of the pile, really, for Monmouthshire County Council to address, rather than a Monmouthshire-wide strategy to take action, to put things in place. And I know actually it's very resourceful, heavy, and I do worry about the capacity as well, obviously, because it does take a long time. As say in Landogo, it took me a year, and that was me really nagging every single day and working very closely with the engineer, very closely with the police. It took a year to actually get things put in place. So we've talked process. I think it would be good to have a strategy, and maybe this working group could put an action plan in place.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry I was late getting here. I was in lately is under the bridge in Ash, which is in Mills Town itself.
Khan Street.
No, sorry?
Khan Street.
Yes.
Yeah, that is.
I haven't seen you out on the open road, so you're saying you can't go out there?
It hasn't been brought on as a site. We can't just park up anywhere.
No, no,
It has
no.
to.
Councillor Jones,
What I'm getting
can you
at is-
can you put your mic on, please?
Sorry?
Can you put your microphone on, please?
What I was going to say was that you know, what does it actually take to get a site put on your route?
As I mentioned earlier, we deal with speed complaints. The complaint comes in. PCSOs or neighbourhood police officers can carry out speed checks on roads up to 40 miles an hour. Obviously, due to health and safety, any speeds above that is down to the police traffic unit to do the checks. What I try to do to speed the system along is I deploy the COVID unit at a location that's complained of. And I did, as I mentioned earlier, put one on the B4598 last year in the summer at a location that was requested. And the speeds at that location, either Steel Horse Calf, was below the speed limit for that road at that time. I can only go by what information comes from that unit. I can't. And then once that information comes, it goes on. Because it was below the limit, it doesn't get referred to GoSafe because it doesn't meet the criteria. If it was above the speed limit and it did meet the criteria, a form is then filled in, and there's certain factors. And it's a scoring sheet. We look at casualties on the road for the past 3 years, the number of accidents, and then there's a scoring sheet which the factors for the road, and such, like I mentioned, public houses, schools, residential homes, care homes, shops, banks, everything gets a score, and it has to reach a certain score before it gets referred to GoSafe. It's not my decision. I don't make the decisions. I try to speed the things along. Like I said, last year, and I've got no problem putting up a unit. If someone complains to me that they've got an issue with speeding, I've got no problem at all in deploying it.
Excuse me, you did want to speak. You just wanted you signalled you wanted to speak.
I just wanted to respond to Sarah with regards to, the next one. Sorry, forgot your name. Right, okay. With regards to, you mentioned Landogo and everything took you a year to bring it on. Well, obviously it is a GoSafe site now, and we do regularly turn up when we can. The problem being that we have, and I just want to raise it again, it has been mentioned to Monmouthshire Highways Department, is some of the signs have been covered up with foliage at the moment, and not just speed limit signs, but a lot of warning signs, etc. And I mentioned it to the Highways Department, the representatives there, Because obviously once a speed limit sign is covered up, we can't enforce it, because that's what we're enforcing is the speed limit, not camera signs. There's no requirement for them anymore. It's just a speed limit sign. So I have put a request forward, but I think, and I also mentioned in that email as well, that there's other signs I've noticed along my travels through Monmouthshire area. A lot of them are being covered up by foliage, warning signs of bends, etc. And I appreciate where you're all coming from with the high speeds in the rural lanes, but as Glenn has said, we are, dare I say, controlled by this form that has to be completed, and it's community factors, that it's not just about the speed, it's about, because obviously they're prioritising where we can go. But what I have mentioned to Glenn, whilst all this has been going on, is something that perhaps we can get our heads together with regards to the B4598, because an issue that I've got is parking. Now, in the past, with certain authorities, they will actually spend some money for us and actually build what we call like a grasscrete area on a grassed area, because we can't just park up on grass. That will be illegal. And obviously there's the problem of being caught in the grass. But some authorities have actually created a parking area on a grass verge as such, or even marked off on a pavement if there's one available, or even to a certain extent cut down some hedge for us to park in. Now, if that we can justify that, then certainly we'll put that forward. If we can, we'll go to our bosses and request that, the partnership manager. Excuse me. But when we're coming back to this average speed problem that you're saying with the calculations, we work on the 85th percentile, but we also take into consideration the amount of high-speed offences, and that is noted in the report that goes to the senior analyst at Go Safe down at Swansea. And basically, it's them that makes the decision, because obviously, as you can imagine, we've got the same complaint all across Gwent. It's not saying that yours isn't as important, obviously it is, and we know it's a problem there, but we have got our own restrictions where, with regards to enforcement. So there are ways that we can do it, but it does need some money spent. And there is perhaps a route that we can go down, which we call a grey site as such, where it's brought on because of the local community with a complaining system. And we can perhaps have a word with the partnership manager to see in this case, can we put this forward? Because this has been going on for years. But another problem is the parking with regards to the vans. So that was something that we'd have to discuss with the Highways Department of Monmouthshire as well.
Okay. No, I'll just let Mr. Adam back in because he's been signalling to come back in. Mr. Adam.
The Go Safe Golden River so-called covert device was placed outside my house, and it was recording speeds over 10 days, and it rained every single day. So hardly any motorbikes went through there. So the statistics are complete nonsense. So what's the point of it?
I think it's been explained, though. I think we just can't determine on the weather forecasts and what time we go there. But I do appreciate that actually them statistics aren't true. I've got Councillor Blake, but I want to finish off. Councillor Jones wants to come back in, and Councillor Smith.
I think something like this is brilliant in terms of sharing each other's concerns and difficulties. And I'm just wondering, how often does Highways, Monmouthshire County Council Highways, meet with you just to discuss the issues and just to keep up to date rather than just emailing back and forward with concerns?
They have the camera sites are already in place. They're reviewed annually.
Having a partnership where there's that communication and engagement and you talking together and dealing with these issues rather than just meeting once a year, because quite a lot of issues can be dealt with in a meeting through discussion rather than just emailing complaints back and forward. Just how to kind of close, because there definitely needs to be a good working relationship between us here in Monmouthshire County Council and you in order for us to kind of forge forward in making some changes and things.
Who's your link in Monmouthshire?
It'd be Graham Kinsella and Mr. Keeble.
So Mr. Keeble and Kinsella are the contacts that liaise with yourselves and go
Well,
safe?
they liaise mainly with our traffic management officer, who is David Matthews, but he's not here today.
Okay, all right, okay. Councillor Jones and then Councillor Smith.
Yeah, what I was going to say, if there was an issue over somewhere to park the vans on the B4598 or the A472 comes back, I will undertake here and now that we will put some of those pads in on the side of the road where you would like them put. Okay?
Right, okay, that's brilliant.
Councillor Smith, no?
I'm a very simple soul. All my elected life as a member, I've known that traffic issues are probably the paramount concern to the residents of Monmouthshire. You see, I think there's a very simple system that you actually have there's reference to the average speeds and this, that and the other and these various bodies. And very sadly, GoSafe has a very low profile that obviously costs quite a lot of money to run. An appropriate speed set for a road. The technology exists to monitor continuously. It must be, in my mind, a cheaper option than all the talking that's done, all the various initiatives that are embarked of, all the various traffic calming proposals. You have the technology to continuously monitor. I happen to think that the residents' safety is the important issue, and the drivers on the road, that's extremely important as well. It's there, the technology exists. Monmouthshire and the police, the talking that's gone over the years, the lack of inaction, the average speeds, set an appropriate speed for the area, ensure that it's continuously monitored. If people don't abide by those speeds, then they incur a penalty. I think that this would be a cheaper option than policemen trying to follow up issues, Monmouthshire County Council trying to follow up issues. We would have a healthier, safer environment. Environmentally, it must be better. And from the police perspective, I would have thought that the number plate recognition that exists would also help them to perhaps curtail other activities that exist in Monmouthshire. I've listened to so many hours of talks, and you've done remarkably well, Debbie, to achieve something in a year, because I'm flogging away at a dead horse. We really have to tackle it, and I think it's a simple situation. I don't know what other people feel about the fact that they're required to drive at 30 miles an hour through Woodside, that they're required to drive it appropriately at 50 miles an hour through Sarah's ward. No, a lot of frustration, Chairman. Simple solution. I'll go with everything that Sarah proposed, that we actually do something, that we work in conjunction with the police, and the police recognise the cost and also the impact on their reputation, because it does impact. And for a safety camera unit or whatever to say that there is nowhere in the locality for them to base their vehicles or their facilities, I find astounding.
Okay, thanks, Val. I've just got a member of the public who wants to come back in there, and then I'll allow Sue back in, and then I've got members of the public on the top there, and I'll allow you back in as well, okay? Right.
Just really briefly then, what we can see this morning is a total disconnect between our experience of living on the B4598 and the picture that comes to your service from your monitoring of the B4598 and other roads. We witness some truly horrendous and dangerous driving and riding. We're dealing with a small minority of road users who come to Monmouthshire specifically to use our roads in a dangerous manner, because they've gone from other counties that Mr. Adams mentioned earlier, including Stafford, where they've been driven out of by the measures that have been taken there. We see it, you're not seeing it, so the issue, as the lady just said, is effective monitoring to actually scope this small minority of dangerous riders brought to the area. You know, they travel through our roads to go to the Steelhorse Cafe and the Oasis Cafe in Abergavenny. We attract dangerous riding.
Okay. Sue?
Thank you, Chairman. We also in Monmouth have our problems. It's not just the other communities. I think every hamlet and town in the county has great problems with people who do not remember their highway code when they've passed their test. I remember when I first came to be a councillor many years ago, and we had to drive down to the old county hall. It was nothing to see 3 police camera vehicles on that route, day in, day out. And to me, as an older driver, they were a comfort because I knew they were looking for my safety as well as everybody else's. It isn't just pedestrians, you have to think of other road users. That's all gone, and it's nice to know that we have got a road safety unit that does this work. I am a bit ignorant about it because I don't see you around Monmouth very often. And when we on Monmouth Town Council complain about the use of our roads, we are told, well, we have no police officers, councillor. We have 1 PCSO, we have 1 officer in the station. So you can't have them out there observing. Now, I'm old-fashioned, and I think if you see a police officer in uniform about, it's a deterrent for people who break the law in any way. So I think the crux of this is, and it's all right speaking to the new commissioners and the officers and the inspectors, if they've got no men under them to do the work, it's just talk. And I really feel that until we have more policemen who are out and about and not sat in the station for half of their working day on their computers, which they have to do, I think we're relying on the public who've got no mandate. We can observe, we can report, but if there's no one at the end to pick up that report and go with it, it's just a nonsense. We need more police, and I think that is the issue right through.
Okay, thanks, Sue. I've got members of the public on the back there, and I'll go through you one at a time. Is it you, Mr. Chandler? Yeah, and then the gentleman next to him. I think you've been here before a couple of months ago, over the Pencoid, Glascoid Arms. That's it. Okay, Mr. Chandler.
Right, I'm Hugh Candler, and I'm clerk to Llanova County Council. One of the matters raised by Mr. Adam, I don't know if anyone's got his written statement, it's worth looking at, is one of the real issues for the residents on the B459 and the R64 is what he calls extremely noisy machines. And it's the noise that probably is the most annoying feature for the people who live along the road. And I know we're trying to push at the moment for VOSA to get involved, the Vehicle Inspectorate, because a lot of these machines that go by have got exhausts that are very easy to tamper with so that they can become noisy even after an MOT test. And that is one of the real issues. I live about 4 miles away from or no less than that, but from the B4598 over a hill, and on a clear Sunday with the wind in the right direction, I can hear the machines on the B4598, and the quality of life of people living on those roads, quite a few here, is very grievously affected on weekends in the summer. Thank you.
Okay. Can I just ask Roger, are we as an environmental health or our department, could they carry out any noise monitoring, or is it not under their remit on public roads? Because if you had, I'll give you an example, a crusher, which I've got 3 of them where I live now, and a pecker, pecking away all day, our monitoring officer will go out there and monitor the noise pollution from them. Could they monitor secretly on the noise pollution from them vehicles, or is it not under our jurisdiction?
I'd have to take advice, but my recollection on that is monitoring which we undertake is placed, and it has to be of intermittent, but over a period of time for them to monitor it to get a sound decibels. I suspect, or I know what's being spoken about here, and that is revving them in revving up motorcycles, high performance vehicles of some description, and taking away and creating noise through that. I don't think our equipment would be able to monitor that, although I will take advice on it. That being said, I suspect it may take us back to the antisocial police section, which the gentleman raised earlier, perhaps, which would raise that. I am advised that police officers did inspect some time ago now, but did inspect exhaust on motorcycles at the Abergavenny Cafe. They had an exercise there some time ago, but they found only one or two which may be suspect. In other words, they weren't manufacturer fitted. But we can investigate that a bit further. I don't think it's something which you can probably pick up with our environmental health equipment as is. But nevertheless, if there is a contravention there, that's what we need to understand, I think, and how that's enforced.
Could I ask, Mr. Chandler, how you've progressed with VOSA?
Well, there's a problem with VOSA because we want them to be there on weekends. I understand they're on a go slow at the moment because they're not getting enough pay, so they don't work on weekends. But and of course they aren't a public body. I think they're a private organisation, which means that it's a bit more difficult to force them to come out. But I would like to see the police working with VOSA on this matter.
So, taking from what you've just said then, what we're saying there is VOSA aren't a public body, they're a separate organisation, privately funded, or work under a contract through the government?
I'm not sure. I have to refer to Mr. Adam. He knows more.
Would it not be the interest if VOSA were in liaison with the local authority to have them come and carry out or operate for the authority for a scheme or something, and perhaps we could find the finances from Go Safe or from somewhere to help towards do some monitoring. It's going to be, from the sound of it, if we haven't got the equipment to carry out the monitoring or do that exercise and somebody else has, sometimes you've got to perhaps go a different direction and work together in delivering something.
They're called the DVSA now. They've changed their name, and it is a government-associated body. It is funded by government.
All right.
Okay. And you know, they have the power, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's probably a recommendation that we can move forward on something like that. Okay. Could you switch your microphone off, please?
One last question. There's a cost involved in monitoring traffic. Val Smith's proposition that number plate recognition system and monitoring would be highly advantageous and completely feasible. I'd like to make a formal proposition that I would be prepared to finance 2 miles of speed, average speed monitoring. 1 mile in Llanbadach and 1 mile on this gentleman's road. Providing any fines that come from it come back to pay the investment off.
I'm sure.
But if there was a cash issue, then I would be prepared to put the cash up until such time it gets funded.
Okay. I'm sure we can talk about with our legal department whether we're allowed to progress something like that. I think at the end of the day, a lot of the situations that we have here, if we had, instead of having 5 authorities involved in Go Safe and they had 10 vans in each authority, we would probably not be sitting here today, because if you had more vans, more personnel, you'd be able to do a lot more, and I think that comes down to funding and the manpower. And it may be something that we have to look at. Each authority has to look at. Is it more investment? How much do we actually invest into Go Safe per annum? Anybody know, as Monmouthshire? Paul? Sorry, Paul. Paul Keeble, Road Safety. How much do we invest? No. The question is, how much do we invest into Go Safe per annum at this moment in time? So we don't contribute anything from our revenue funding towards Go Safe. They don't have no funding at all from us. Okay. Thank you. There you go. You have to speak to Welsh Government.
Sorry.
Hang on a sec. Yeah, fire away.
Oh, sorry, just to finish. But it does seem to be an eminently sensible approach that if there's an average speed camera system, you know, we all, if you're driving along the motorway and there's an average speed limit, everybody sticks to it because there's a fine at the end of it. So 1 mile section in this people's area, 1 mile out of Llanbadach, would kill the problem completely. And it's typically about, I think the latest cost for average speed camera systems, about £100,000 per mile. So 2 systems installed, job done. We'd all be happy as a consequence. I'm sure it would pay for itself in a number of years, because people would still do it, but once they got used to it, the whole system would perform its function well. And it's basically not something that causes trouble with the heavy traffic, which you know is still a problem to solve, I agree, but it's also not very in your face. You know, it's quite discreet, so it doesn't change the aesthetics of the environment very much, like big flashing red lights, which tell you that there's a speed limit, but people tend to ignore.
So where we invest tens of thousands in calming measures to slow traffic down, we perhaps should be looking at a different way of probably putting some system in there which would have a return and be there for quite many years and would work.
And would definitely work. You know, people get fined and penalty points. They soon change their way of behaving.
Okay. I'm sure the name's Howarth, and £200,000 would be welcome in my bank account. I'll go in partnership. Right. Councillor Blaber.
Just a quick question. So 5 authorities, 5 vans, in a year, on average, I'm happy with the average on this one. What percentage of time do you spend in Monmouthshire? It's probably less than the 20%, I would have thought.
As you can imagine, Monmouthshire is a very big area. We cover, obviously, Usk, up at Abergavenny, Chepstow, all these areas, Caldecott. But basically, with the 5 officers, 6 officers, sorry, we go around and we got one as a bike officer. So obviously when it's inclement weather, he'll go and jump onto a different local authority as well. Now each site that we enforce is graded into what we call a red, amber, green, to the extent of where there's high amounts of vehicles that are speeding, with seatbelt offences or mobile phone offences, because we can do all of those as well. And then obviously you drop down to sort of amber and green, and this is what Glenn was on about earlier. We have an annual site review where we got the respective Highways Authority member that comes to our unit and goes through our sites, and whether they're upgraded to back up to a red or downgraded to an amber or a green. Now, this is what I was saying earlier on, that perhaps, you know, because I'm in my van on Sunday, so I'll make a point of driving up the B4598 to look for any parking, anything, or even just to jot down possible parking areas. And then we'll put it forward then to bring it on as a grey site. So then it's up to the enforcement officer, and it will be stressed when I put it on the system, if it does get authorised, that they enforce on weekends only, rather than at midday on a Monday or something, because that's not going to be practical. It needs to be sort of thoroughly enforced through the summer months. Obviously, we can recognise there is a problem. But as far as answering your question, I can't give a percentage, because we've literally got what we call a RAG system, a red, amber, green. So the most visits you're going to get on a site is 5 a month. But as you can imagine, what we've been saying, with leave, with sickness, and there's only 6 of us, and we're all trying to sort of cover all the sites as well. There's not enough of us, dare I say it, and it's the same across the board with the police and police staff. So, okay. But we do our best. We really will.
Can I just say then that we need a sort of bespoke solution here, because the one size fits all, you know, we don't have a high volume of traffic or a high volume of offenders. We have a small minority of extreme offenders. So I think yourselves as an agency, with the police, with our other partners, need to find a solution here, and I think there needs to be a bit of flexibility in the system somewhere, rather than a black and white form, and if it doesn't hit the form, it doesn't get done.
Okay, good point, valid point.
And this,
right.
sorry.
Yeah, you fire away. Yeah.
And this is what I'm saying, we're going to refer it now from this meeting, we're going to use this as a speed complaint itself, and refer it on to Chris Hume, the partnership manager, because obviously it's a serious problem here. We know there's a problem with high speeders, but with the black and white form as such, there's no grey area, and this is why we're calling it a grey site, because it doesn't meet the criteria of the form. There's not many schools along the road. There's no post office. There's the, you know, and it's all community factors that bring at the point system, that bring a site on. Whereas then sadly and unfortunately, the B4598 hasn't got many of those factors. So it's lowering the score. So like you say, we're going to have to try and push this through. We're not the decision makers on this. We can only take away from this meeting what we can. No problem, and we'll push it forward. And me as a camera enforcement officer, I'm going to go up there on Sunday, and for you guys have a look all the way. So it's just from Usk through until Abergavenny on the B4598.
If you could just keep it at the front of your mind, and then the frail elderly residents.
Oh, I appreciate that, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sue, and then Val.
Just a quick, you didn't mention Monmouth in your list of towns that you go to. You wouldn't expect me to let it go by.
Or Gilwan. Val.
Just briefly, did we ever receive as a council a response from Welsh Government on the motion that I put forward to council? Welsh Government do respond.
I can follow that up, Mr. Chairman. I don't recall having received a response, but I think it may have gone from cabinet members.
£200 million in my area, which is the Edser Valley east to West Link Road. £200 million, and guess what they put in on there at the end of it? They put in exactly the system you're looking for, and they're spending £200 million on there for reducing speed, and they're still going to use the speed average cameras on there. So it just shows, doesn't it? They don't get it right all the time. They've still got to go back to the old type. Right, I finished with questions now. Have any more members of the public? Yes, there you go.
Good morning. I'm Carl Thomas, the owner of the Glasgow public house just up the way. I was wondering if we had any answers, if any of the questions that were raised at the last meeting I attended with the A472 from outside the offices here back to Little Mill. With I'm sure we've covered the speed issue on that today already, but grass verges, hedgerows, and as somebody mentioned in here as well today, the fact that signage, importantly as well, the signage being road speed limits and things like that, actually being cut back or anything being brought into it. I've also been a public house here, a lot of different things. We've got a lot of clubs that come in there. I'm sure I raised the issue before with cyclists and things like that, complaining on the actual state of the road from Little Mill to Usk as well. These factors of hedges and grass verges being overgrown and stuck out are forcing these cyclists further into the road, which seems to be encouraging more anger and rage on the roads with the motorists and driving them further out into the road. And with the speed of that, I'm sure it's short-lived before there is a very nasty accident. These were raised, I'm sure, about 3 months ago when I attended before. The other issue being 2 out of 5 of my neighbours from the pub unfortunately suffer with MS. The speed of that and the signage that isn't visible from the road. One of them did actually have a fall outside a property opposite the pub, and the reaction of the motorist there was to swerve and sound their horns. Really, I just wonder if there was any answers for the last meeting that we came to, and whether there was any resolvement on actually cutting the grass verge, and realistically not the first 2 metres of the road either side, taking it back down to actual hedgerow to improve the visibility and the safety from Little Mill to Usk.
Okay, Mr. Thomas, we do have your minutes with us, and we're going to agree your minutes there. And I think your major issue here was safety on grass verges and hedges. And there was an action by this committee for head of operations to collect some data for you on traffic impact assessments, etc. on that road. I'll ask Roger, have we managed to do that at the moment? It's an action RH, I believe that may be yourself. Chair asked the head of operations if there was data available for this road, such as traffic impact assessments. Head of operations answered that he would return to the committee with further information. Can we make sure we can collate that information?
I'll bring it to a future meeting,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Reference to
Could I
your
just-
hedges and your grass verges, have they
pick
been
up on-
cut?
Somebody made an effort to cut the first metre of that, but that
Not
was
very
for
good.
about 100 yards. It made no impact to the actual thing. The impact really needs the full stretch of the road, not just a 100-yard stretch.
And then Brian wants to come in. Roger?
Just to pick that up, if you've got, the Highway Authority will typically cut a metre swath along the road edge or the bank or the verge, whatever is there. That's what we will normally cut. The hedges themselves are the responsibility of the landowner, and if it is creating a highway risk, then we can raise it with that landowner to cut that piece of hedge back. So if there's a particular area which is causing concern, then we will pick up on that. I would say I went through there recently. I do go through there quite often, and I know exactly where you are. We can see where you are. And I didn't consider it to be overgrown to create a hazard at the entrance to your business. But if there are particular issues which you'd like to raise with myself, then I'm happy to do that, because my recollection through there, a lot of it is a very wide verge. So in terms of highway safety, at least going west it is. If it's on the east side, then yeah, we'll pick that up. But on the west side, there's quite a wide verge for a long stretch through there, and in places there's pavements through there as well. But I'm happy to pick up the specifics.
Okay, and the collector of the data and everything, Roger, can we resolve that in the next couple of weeks? Brian?
Yeah, really, Chairman, it's just to reiterate what we all know, a lot of us know about this business about verge cutting, is that, we are effectively stopped from cutting anything until the end of August. Now, this is a bit more complicated than it sounds, because a lot of farmers will cut their hedges through August. It's sort of in between. It's a sort of quiet time of year in a lot of cases. But because Welsh Government, national government has adopted the same attitude now, we mustn't cut hedges till the end of August. A lot of the hedges that would have been cut, and they would have taken the verges out with it, don't get cut anymore. And I mean, I've personally been threatened by an individual when we were cutting a hedge to improve access to the caravan site at our place, been threatened with an individual to report me to Welsh Government, even though it was a safety issue.
I think the legislation, though, on this is, if there is a safety issue, you actually are authorised to cut your edges and
yeah, I know, but it's
trim them, and even grass verges. And I did have some legislation. I'm sure this committee has wrote to the Minister.
But it was just that this gentleman suggested you shouldn't just be cutting the first couple of swipes along the verge. You should be getting right back to the hedge. Well, if you do that, you will be in for the high jump. I can assure you.
Okay. Is the land in question private, or is it council owned?
My land is obviously private, but other than fence line, that isn't really the issue just outside my pub. It's the whole issue, and I'm sure I mentioned it last time I was here. The council offices are situated here, and then you've got Usk just down the way. The whole drive from Little Mill right the way down to it isn't the most attractive of routes with the state of the road and the grass verges. And I understand what the gentleman said there with the fact that outside the pub I do own is quite clear. Yeah, that's down to a cost of my own to clear it out for obviously people leaving the pub, and heaven forbid there being an accident on there, which just brings it all back then for further round the corner where the hedges and the trees are out into the road. And I'm not going to brush on it again, but the speed as well. It was safer for me to do it myself. just wondering if the council were going to take up any of that.
I'm with you on this one. I think our countryside needs to be kept tidy and clean, and the edges tidy, and the grass verges, and whatever we can do as an authority, we do. Whatever we can do as public people and private people, we do. But at the moment, I'm really disappointed in the state of the countryside. The yellow stuff growing everywhere. It's appalling, whether it's rules or regulations or what. I think we've always had respect in our countryside as Monmouthshire, and we've always tried to keep our countryside and our communities tidy. And I am really disappointed in actually what we've done as a council in some of the agreements and policies we've put in place. I'm with you on this one. Can we come back with this data for this gentleman? Okay, Ms. Thomas, thank you. Right, we're going to start our meeting. Thank you, everyone. Have a safe journey home, and hopefully we'll have some recommendations from our discussions with Go Safe. You can't go anywhere yet because you're an agenda item, sir. You ain't going anywhere. You're an agenda item. Okay, and can I have a 5-minute recess, please, for toilet and a quick drink? Thank you. Got anything in your bag? Right, members, let's make a move. Come on, we need to push on. Come on, members, I need to push on. As soon as I have a quorum, are we ready to go? Yeah, let's go. Right, to confirm the minutes of the previous meetings. 11:30. 30th of June 2016. Can I propose and a seconder that they are a true and accurate record of what went on the 30th of June 2016?
On the 30th of June, Chairman, can I ask please for an addition? No, it's not. It's the next one. Beg your pardon.
Can I have a propose and a seconder that these are true and accurate? Councillor Easton and Councillor Smith. Any actions from their minutes? I've just addressed the one. That's Roger to bring his information back to toilets issues November.
I picked up one or two. They were typographic also. If I show afterwards.
Yeah, no problem. Show of hands, please. A true and accurate record, and we've moved it. Thank you. Right, meeting of the 21st of July 2016. True and accurate record, please.
Sorry, Chairman. Please can we have added to that the fact, because I do think it is important, the gentleman who attended that meeting, have I got the right one? Yes. The public forum.
Yeah.
The gentleman who attended actually attended in a wheelchair because it is very important.
Okay. We got his name, Mr. John Nixon.
Mr. John Nixon, yes.
How you want to minute that? I'll leave with your discretion.
Yes, just because it's got a great relevance, those traffic things.
I've been watching the disabled games, and actually they got this thing on television, which is wonderful, but they slag each other off by having no arms and legs, and they're all sitting in there, and I actually amazed, but that's people thinking, talking to each other, so how you address certain people who have disabilities, but they didn't care, and that. Move. Tony? Yeah. Val? Thank you. Job done. Right. Revenue and Capital Monitoring 2016 period 1 outturn forecast. Good morning. Nearly afternoon, but good morning. Just introduce yourself. Mark Howcroft.
For the purposes of cameras, my name is Mark Howcroft. I'm the Assistant Head of Finance here in Monmouthshire.
Okay, and we're studying period 1, which I'll call quarter 1, which is months April, May and June, yeah?
Yeah, you're going to steal my thunder a bit there, Chair. Just to explain to or remind members, this would normally have been brought to you as part of your July cycle of meetings, because it would have normally been received in the first Cabinet meeting in July. SLT and Cabinet deferred it to their extraordinary meeting at the end of July, and therefore this is the first meeting that's been available in the select cycle to receive it subsequently. We've moved away from quarterly reporting in favour of trying to get timely information to members. So whilst this is an outturn forecast, it's based on 2 months' worth of actuals rather than a full 3 months' worth of actuals. It follows the normal conventions of reporting requirements, so probably the most important table for you to look at is the one starting paragraph 3.1.2, which gives you an indication of the directorate totals to arrive at the net cost of services outturn, the appropriations and financing costs, the council tax recovery and RSG settlements.
Can I ask my usual question, please?
Where's your outturn?
Which of those columns, the revised annual budget, the annual forecast for the month 12, the revised annual budget, so the budget figure that we set, that was set at the beginning, has been revised already.
Yeah.
Quite legitimately, still
Yeah.
like to see that figure in the column.
The budget, as you said, is the one that the council has set at the start of the year, given refinements. So, for instance, one of the early refinements that affects the first quarter is that there may very well be savings that members have agreed that have to be disaggregated down to a directorate level that immediately cause a environment in the first period. But I take your point, Councillor, and the conversation we had in the break there was that actually it's probably something I need to be more explicit on for month 6, because there is quite a significant change to the structures within the council to reflect the fact that we will now have a resources directorate, and the operations directorate will be subsumed within chief executive. So actually taking you through that journey in terms of understanding where services now sit would be quite a useful exercise. So I'll do that for month 6. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So the overall message for you as councillors is that our outturn based on month 2 activity is that we anticipate, if things don't change, that we'll be about £1.4 million adrift of our balanced budget position at the end of the year. There's a certain caveat with that, is that the position at the first quarter always tends to look worse and improves through the year, largely because at that time officers are looking at the budget savings that have been set and agreed, haven't necessarily got the activity data behind it to be confident as to report fully achieving those. And what we also find is that if I refer you to, let's have a look, table 3.15, that shows a useful comparison between period 1 variance and actually the outturn of the previous year. So you can see in social care terms, their monitoring or their forecasting doesn't really change on any regular basis. What generally happens is that stays the same, and actually compensatory savings are found largely from the likes of enterprise and operations departments to compensate through the year in an ad hoc fashion. The difficulty we've got in assuming that in this first quarter is that the one difference between 2016-17 and 2015-16, an additional £1 million worth of savings has come out of the budget within operation and enterprise, which makes it all the more acute in terms of affording those savings before they actually contribute to the wider financial challenges. And that was the main reason why SLT members asked to defer the report from the original cabinet meeting at the start of July to the end of July, to give them a bit more consideration as to how they might respond to that. And one of their responses has been to ask for an interim month 5 information, so that they're actually ahead of the game when it comes to month 6, that actually they can demonstrate some tangible process with addressing some of these financial problems. There are some big leaps, and what I've asked SLT to perhaps consider is that there are a number of compensating over and underspends. It would be quite helpful if the directors agreed to some environments that change the nature of the service, that actually we're focusing more on those real adverse situations rather than the report explaining the complexities of an underspend here compensating for an overspend here. It gets quite a challenging aspect for members to follow, I think, in that regard. So if I refer to paragraph 3.13, you can see there that in 15-16 and 14-15 that actually period 1 always tends to show a deficit, and that generally gets better through the year to become an outturn. But the one concern I'd raised with you is that the deficit has never been as bad as it's been experienced in the first quarter of 16-17. So I would encourage you to look closely at the quarter 2 position to see whether any tangible changes have been made during the summer months.
Can we come back to the point you made earlier that social care tends to be at a deficit, and it's generally compensated for by savings in other sections, yet you're saying at the moment that the savings in the other sections are don't look as if they're going to be there, so we're still going to have a £1.3 million deficit at the end of the year?
Yeah, if I can give you a tangible example affecting stronger communities. I mean, one of operations benefits in the past has been things like the Sutra arrangement, which has been an income generating perspective. Welsh Government are wanting to change the relationship and nature of that contract such that it will be on the basis of cost recovery, and have been quite, as it has been in the past, either to compensate for pressures within an operations directorate, or ultimately to contribute to the financial challenge we find in the wider council environment.
But further on in your report, there's a discussion on mandates, and it looks as though a lot of the mandates within the enterprise section, that area, are not going to be met. So therefore, it's going to be a difficult roll-on effect eventually.
That's the message I'd like to leave you with, that actually over the years, if you look, that we've taken £80 million probably out of our net budget by way of mandates. And actually what we've tried to do as a council is protect, accommodate political aspirations around social care and education provision, and largely what we've found is that a number of the mandates have involved quite a lot of work to drive small elements of saving within enterprise and operations. I'm finding all that low-hanging fruit has long since been picked as a council.
Okay. Any questions on the quarter one monitoring? I think it's quite clear there. Senior officers said quarter two will be more appealing to savings and overspends than what we've got at the moment here.
That explains the revenue position. Appreciating that you have a general portfolio and understanding the council services generally. Schools, the issue around schools is that there is always a presumption to use school balances. My concern about that is that the level of school balances proposed by schools will largely extinguish the reserve at outturn, in my view. It's not a situation that necessarily the Cabinet member or the Director of CYP agree with, and I acknowledge that there is a variable aspect to this, because historically what we tend to find is that Welsh Government and EAS pass money out in the last month of the financial year, which means that actually that money rolls over to help improvement in the following financial year, but what it does is artificially creates a surplus balance at the end of the year, and that may very well be the situation this year. I haven't got any early indications as to whether they're changing their approach to that or not. The difficulty for me is I don't want to look a gift horse in their mouth and say, well, we don't want that money, we clearly want it, but we'd like it in a fashion that's earlier in the year, that we could use it in a planned fashion. Yeah.
It says to me, Chair, that mandates this year was a step in the wrong direction. It should have stopped the year before. And what will be the direction we take this year, on the basis that there's quite likely to be another 5% crack at the budgets available to us in the Welsh Government? What route we take this year, because we're coming up to the budgets now shortly, what route we're going to take this year to achieve what you would like to achieve as a balanced budget at the end of the year?
Well, I'd remind you it's councillors that have the responsibility to set a balanced budget. I will help you with that as much as I can. It's been a reflection of mine that actually what we've relied on in mandates is officers coming forward and volunteering services in the service area. And one of the suggestions that I made to Cabinet and SLT that they've taken up this year is that whether we think that actually the mandate process will satisfy our financial challenge going forward. As I mentioned earlier, we've taken about £18 million out of it through the mandate process. It's been very successful in the last 4 years, but it does require largely the same individuals to do the heavy lifting. Those budgets are getting prohibitively smaller every year, and actually I'm not sure necessarily that a cuts based on what we always term as salami slicing is necessarily the way to go with it. You will have had discussions around future Monmouthshire and the consideration wider about looking at what services are provided into the future and how those are sustainable. One of the ways that we're looking to change the budget setting process this year is to treat everyone a bit more equitably and say, well, actually, what would a 5 or 10% saving look like in your service area, to give members some choices going into next year rather than the mandate process that really, when selects come to look at them, their consideration is whether they like it or not. There's no immediate plan B, plan C or plan D to it. So I'm hoping that that approach will give you some more flexibility than you've had previously, but there is a pragmatism that we do have to take about £5 million out of our budget, which is a net budget of 140 million. So it's quite a significant sum every year. The challenge for us is to do that in a fashion that doesn't impact upon frontline services, doesn't impact upon members' priorities to do so. And I think that might be increasingly quite difficult as we go forward.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Have we anything on the revenue that you want to just ask Mark about?
I'd like to do what I said I'd like to do last night. I can go and have a chat with Mark, because going through these, I've marked a number of things that are of interest to me to say, can you clarify that for me? And you want to go home before lunchtime, don't you, Chairman? So if that's all right. Yeah.
Right.
So
Can I just ask a quick question? We've got senior leadership team restructure, and we've just had that, I think, last couple of months, haven't we? Can we just have a paper on that, if you don't mind, please, on like a tree? Because we were talking round about 300 and something thousand pound there of savings, and I know it's been a bugbear of some councillors for many, many years on senior salaries and where we were and restructuring, and so we were always led to believe we had so many of this and so many of that. I'd just like to have a look at senior leadership team restructuring and senior salaries, which is under our remit, CEOs, executive.
Yeah, that's one of the immediate environments that affects after the budget has been set, the changes. I think how I'd like to wrap it up is if I do it as part of the explanation to you around how directorates have changed, how the resources directorate has come about, and what sort of costs are included in there, because it's fairly fundamental to that.
It's a
that
savings,
understanding. Yeah.
but it's we were always led to believe here as councillors that we were going to strip out and try and keep it as tight as possible, and the senior salaries were dropping, and we'd only so many, but it seems to me that we don't actually alter that. I'd just like to have it, and maybe wrong, I'd just like to have a schematic of what we have there and where we were previous, to be honest with you. Talk is cheap sometimes, but in this case, talk hasn't to be cheap. Talk's got to be a saving, hasn't it?
Well, the council set itself a mandate to drive 315,000 from senior leadership restructure as of quarter one.
B11?
Yeah, B11, yeah. As at quarter one, manifest out of that is £270,000 worth of savings, with a further £43,000 still to find. So, and as I said, it's integral to the change in departments, change of responsibilities, etc., to be able to drive those economies down. So I will put a before and after structure chart together, and I've said that I'll explain it.
Is there a big risk with that, though? Because putting, I think this committee made it quite clear they wanted the paper on sickness and everything coming before this authority. Is there massive risk on this by actually putting more on people and giving them a lift in, I'd say, I won't say give them a lift in the pay scale or whatever on the matrix they have, and then all of a sudden then you find that the risk is that we have more sickness and we lose them, etc., because restructuring carries that massive risk, especially on staff.
Well, there's a couple of considerations there outside of just senior leadership restructure. I mean, what I was trying to describe was that actually our senior leadership costs across the piece have come down by 280,000, which was the purpose of the mandate. In terms of the health of the organisation and requiring more people to do less, and the stress considerations, I mean, you might be better off getting a view from our HR or senior management side of it than necessarily from the finance manager's point of view. But I mean...
Okay, can we have the data from the last couple of years of senior management and what it was costing to what it's costing now, and how many we've got there? Because what you class as senior management, maybe we didn't class as senior management, and there may be a balance where some figures are slightly out. So I'll give you a salary of £50,000 probably didn't come in under senior salary. But if you drop that to £45,000, it may not come in now, but it may be classed as senior salary and a saving. I just want some balance there.
I will do the before and after position. I think simplistically senior management is head of service and above, whereas your operational manager or your middle manager isn't necessarily captured in in that mandate.
I got Val and then Sue.
You're looking at, you've also asked for a report coming back on sickness within the authority, the staff. Within that report, would it also consider the requirements, the style of working that that staff now have, the home working, flexible working, whatever, whether that has any impact on health?
It's certainly a report that Audit Committee have asked the HR service to bring forward in terms of implications around things like redundancy, level of sickness, etc. I'm probably not as close to it to give you an informed opinion, and we'll probably defer to them in terms of seeing what that report looks like.
The actual impact that home working can have on some people. Become a bit lonely and isolated, and you don't share your problems.
Yeah, I'm struggling to conclude how I might quantify that for me from a point of finance.
Just as a passing thought, all right?
Okay, Sue.
I remember when we had a very, well, not large, but a very accessible SR department, and you saw what was going on, you knew what was going on, and you could keep a watching eye on the staff and be as helpful as you can, because after all, we employ them with public money and we should have a duty of care. What I would like to see, I know it's an awful big ask, but when you make this report, what about, I'm seeing faces that I thought had been made redundant about the building, and they're back with a portfolio of work. Are they filling in for someone who's ill, or are they back because the workload is too large? It's a big question. I can't help but notice, and I think, well, we thought we said goodbye to you. What are you doing back? And what are you doing? What are you physically doing? And are you doing it as a minder? And will you hand it back over to someone else when they're back? I'm sorry, but I have to ask the question.
Is audit on that one, Tony? Will that cover Sue's question there? Okay. Right, can we have an answer for Sue then, please?